On August 21st, 1879, 15 people were stopped in their tracks at the parish church in Knock village. In the cold wind and the pouring rain, what was it these people saw? Those people witnessed something not common, nor was it even rare, but they witnessed something miraculous. At the gable wall of the parish church, Our Lady, St. Joseph, and St. John the Evangelist appeared, and beside them was a lamb in front of a cross, standing on an altar and surrounded by angels. And this apparition lasted for about 2 hours. Our Lady and those that appeared did not speak a word, and it was October the same year when the testimonies were took. These 15 people witnessed an event that to this day causes pilgrims to flock to Knock. So, what do we know about the apparition witnesses? Judith Campbell. She saw the apparition when she was 22 years old and died at just 36 years of age. A paragraph from her testimony says, "I live at Knock. I remember the evening and right of the 21st August last. Mary Byrne called to my house about 8 o'clock on that evening and asked me to come and see the great sight at the chapel." Dominic Byrne, another apparition witness, had said in his testimony, "I continued looking on for fully an hour, and then I went away to visit Mrs. Campbell, who was in a dying state. When we returned, the vision had disappeared." End of quote. Judith Campbell had left because her mother was quite sickly, and when she got home she thought her mother had died, but really her mother had fainted. She ran to the church for help, and all the others ran back with her. Patrick Walsh was 65 years old at the time of the apparition, and he died at 74 years of age. But Patrick Walsh's testimony is a little bit different from the other 14 witnesses. He actually did not see the figures, but rather, as his testimony states, a large globe of golden light. In part of his testimony, he stated, "About 9 o'clock on that night, I was going on some business through my land, and standing a distance of about half a mile from the chapel, I saw a very bright light on the southern gate end of the chapel. It appeared to me to be a large globe of golden light. I never saw, I thought, so brilliant a light before. It appeared high up in the air above and around the chapel gable, and it was circular in its appearance," he had also said. It wasn't until the following day that Patrick Walsh heard that it was part of an apparition that the other 14 witnesses saw. Patrick Byrne was 16 years old when he saw the apparition. He would have been approximately 80 years old when he died, and he was one of the 3 surviving witnesses to give testimony to the Second Commission of Inquiry. His mother also seen the apparition, along with some of his cousins, Mary Byrne and Dominic Byrne included. Patrick Byrne said in his testimony, "Dominic Byrne Jr., a namesake of mine, came to my house and said that he had seen the biggest sight that ever he witnessed in his life. That was then after 8 o'clock. At the end of the testimony, he says that he remained only 10 minutes and then went away." And this grave is for Dominic Sr., who was 36 years old when he saw the apparition, and he lived until 73 years of age, dying from natural causes. He said, "My cousin Dominic Byrne came to see us at about 8 o'clock p.m. and called me to see the vision of the Blessed Virgin Mary and the other saints at the south gable of the chapel." Now continuing on to another one of the Byrnes. Mary O'Connell, or at the time of the apparition, Nee Byrne, was 29 years old when she saw the apparition. She was Dominic Byrne Jr.'s older sister. She also outlived the rest of her family who had seen the vision. She died at 86 years old, only 6 weeks after giving her testimony to the Second Commission of Inquiry. In her first testimony, she said, "Mary McLaughlin came on the evening of the 21st August to my house at about 7:30 o'clock. She remained some time. I came back with her as she was returning homewards. It was either 8 o'clock or 7:45 at the time. It was still bright. I had never heard from Mrs. McLaughlin about the vision, which she had already seen just before that. The first I learned of it was on coming at the time just named from my mother's house, in company with Miss Mary McLaughlin, and at the distance of 300 yards or so from the church. Bridget Trench. She was 75 years old when she saw the apparition, and was one of the oldest of all the witnesses. She was also the only one to give her full testimony in Irish, and she said in her testimony, "I was at the house of Mrs. Campbell, which was quite near to the chapel. While I was there, Mary Byrne came in and said there was a sight to be seen at the chapel, such as we never before beheld. And she told us to all come and see it. I asked her what it was, and she said that the Blessed Virgin, St. Joseph and St. John were to be seen there." End quote. Later, she exclaimed, "100,000 thanks to God, and to the glorious Virgin, that has given us this manifestation. I went in immediately to kiss and touch the feet of the Blessed Virgin. But I felt nothing in the embrace but the wall, and I wondered why I could not feel with my hands the figures which I had so plainly and so distinctly seen." End quote. But she also did say that she was so taken with the Blessed Virgin Mary that she did not pay much attention to any other. She died at 82 years of age. Margaret Byrne Younger and Dominic Byrne Jr. Here, Margaret Byrne is buried with her daughter Margaret and her son Dominic. Dominic Byrne Sr., her nephew, and Mary Byrne, her daughter, also called Mary O'Connell, have their own graves, but the three from this family are buried together. Her maiden name was Margaret Burke, and she was the widow of Dominic Byrne, who passed away before the vision happened. She was 68 years old at the time of the vision, and she died around 97 years old. In her testimony, she said, "I was called out about 8:15 by my daughter Margaret to see the vision of the Blessed Virgin Mary and of the saints, who appeared at the end of the little church. It was getting dark, it was raining. I came with others to the wall opposite the gable. I remained looking on for fully 15 or 20 minutes. Then I left and returned to my own house." End quote. Unlike her mother Margaret, her daughter Margaret the Younger did not get to see a long life after the apparition. She passed less than a year after it. She was 21 years old when she saw the apparition of Knock, and she died from tuberculosis. "I left my own house at 7:30, and we went to the chapel and locked it. I came out to return home. I saw something luminous and bright at the south gable, but it never entered my head that it was necessary to see or inquire what it was. I passed by it and went home shortly after about 8:00. My niece Catherine Murray called me out to see the Blessed Virgin and the other saints that were standing at the south gable of the chapel. I went up then and ran up to see what was to be seen." Dominic Byrne Jr. was 20 years old at the time of the apparition, and he was a church clerk assistant. He died from tuberculosis at only 35 years of age. His mother and two of his sisters also saw the apparition. In part of his testimony he said, "On the occasion when my sister came about 8:00 in the evening of the 21st August into our house, she exclaimed, 'Come, Dominic, and see the image of the Blessed Virgin,' as she had appeared to us down at the chapel." End quote. And later he says, "I then went with her, and by the time some 10 or 12 people had been collected around the place." He also says, "I was filled with wonder at the sight I saw. I was so affected that I shed tears. I continued looking on for fully an hour." End quote. That's when he went to check on Mrs. Campbell. I recommend reading the witnesses' full testimonies that can be found on Knock Shrine website. Now, I only mentioned 9 apparition witnesses, and there are 10 buried in Knock. The 10th witness is Mrs. Hugh Flatley. She is buried in Knock graveyard, but it can be a bit difficult to find her grave, as she is with the Leach family plot. An interesting fact is, she was 44 years old when she saw the apparition, and she died 44 years later, on the 44th anniversary of the Knock apparition. In her testimony, she noted on how she thought that the apparition were statues that the priest had put outside. Now we have one more question to solve. Where are the other 5 apparition witnesses that are not buried in Knock? Patrick Hill. What we do know about him is that after the apparition, he moved to America and eventually settled in Boston, Massachusetts. He was the cousin of John Curry, who was the youngest witness to the apparition, who during the apparition, Patrick lifted John Curry up so that he could see better. His burial place is not well documented. He also had one of the most detailed testimonies, which is quite surprising as he was only 11 at the time. But he was also the one brave enough to jump over the wall and to get as close as he could. He said in his testimony that, "On the day I was drawing home turf, or peat from the bog on an ass, about 8 o'clock in the evening. Dominic Byrne came into the house. He cried out, 'Come up to the chapel and see the miraculous lights and beautiful visions that are to be seen there.' I followed him. Another man by the name Dominic Byrne and John Durkin, and a small boy, John Curry, came with me. We were all together. We ran over towards the chapel." Catherine Murray was also a child to have seen the vision. Margaret Byrne, the widow, was her grandmother, and Catherine was only 8 years old when she witnessed the apparition. However, she sadly passed away at the age of 14 due to tonsillitis. Her testimony was short, and she stated, "I was staying at my grandmother's. I followed my aunt and uncle to the chapel." She also says how she saw the figures for about 20 or 30 minutes. I'm sorry to say, though, that her burial place is very hard to pin down. Mary McLaughlin. She was 45 when she saw the apparition, and she was the housekeeper for the parish priest. She was also the first person to see the apparition, although it was only a little later that she realized it was an apparition. She said at the hour of 7 or so, or a little later, while it was yet bright day, "I passed on from the Rev, the Archdeacon's house, on by the chapel, towards the house of Mrs. Byrne, widow. On passing by the chapel, and at a little distance from it, I saw a wonderful number of strange figures or appearances at the gable." End quote. Later, she says, "I was wondering to see there such an extraordinary group, yet I passed on and said nothing, thinking that probably the Archdeacon had been supplied with those beautiful figures from Dublin or somewhere else, and that he had said nothing about them, and had left them in the open air." End quote. Her testimony also says, "After looking at them, I passed on to the house of Mrs. Byrne in the village. After reaching Widow Byrne's house, I stayed there half an hour at least, and returned then homewards to the Archdeacon's house, accompanied by Miss Mary Byrne. And as we approached the chapel, she cried out, 'Look at the beautiful figures!' We gazed at them for a little while, and then I told her to go for her mother, Widow Byrne, and her brother and her sister and her niece, who were still at the house, which she and I had left." End quote. She stayed watching until the others had got there, and she eventually told Mary Byrne to go for her uncle, Brian Byrne, and her aunt, or any of the neighbours. She also noted about how she got poured on by the rain, and yet the figures did not get a bit wet. Mary McLaughlin's place of burial is quite a mystery, as well as what age she died at. Now we have John Durkin. All that is wrote in his testimony is this: one of 3 who accompanied young Hill. His testimony is the same as that given by each of the Byrnes. He was 24 years old when he saw the apparition, and sadly his burial site is also not well documented. So that leaves us with the final witness. John Curry was the very youngest out of all 15 that were there that day. He was only 5 years old when he saw the apparition, and because he was only 5, his testimony only says, "The child says he saw images, beautiful images, the Blessed Virgin and Saint Joseph. He could state no more than that he saw the fine images and the lights, and heard the people talk of them, and went upon the wall to see the nice things, and the lights." John Curry was the last living apparition witness, and 50 years later, while reading the newspaper in America, he saw that 2 other witnesses did a second commission of inquiry, and so he got in contact to make a testimony. He quoted, "I remember August 21st, 1879 as well as I do last night." End quote. He also quoted, "The figures were so life-size. I will remember them till I go to my grave." End quote. I recommend reading his full testimony that can be found online. He died at 69 years of age, and he had emigrated to America. After his death, for decades, he laid in an unmarked grave in Pine Lawn Cemetery, Long Island. However, once his burial site was located, his remains were moved in 2017 to the grounds of St. Patrick's Old Cathedral, New York. Thank you all for watching, and do you know anything more about the ordinary people who saw the extraordinary? And have you ever been to Knock? Tell me down in the comments. And if you are planning a visit to Knock soon, maybe stop in at Knock Graveyard to pay respects to the 10 apparition witnesses who are buried there. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel. God bless!